Welcome, everybody, to the Gate Expectations podcast, where I bring in a weekly guest to talk all things Yu-Gi-Oh! And get to know a little more about each person I talk to. This is the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast that is run by a full-fledged journalist such as myself. This is episode 21. If you haven't checked it out yet, you can check out earlier podcasts with guests like Steven Trifanowski, Jesse Cotton, Team Samurai X1, Doug Zeef, Farfa, Crush Cards, and many more. My guest for this week is a TCG player, writer, and a site director for two major Yu-Gi-Oh! Websites you've probably used at one point for information. He is a longtime veteran of the game, playing since 2001. It is Dan Parker. Dan, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
And really glad to have you on. And I know that, nowadays in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! World, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Information is so much easier to access than way before it was, like back in like the early 2000s when you and I started getting into the game now. And you are a major player behind it because you are the site director of both Yugipedia and Yu-Gi-Oh! Organization, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So what got you into getting those two projects started?
So a lot of it dates back to just as I was growing up following things like metagame.com, and then it ultimately culminated in just having nothing else to do when I was living in Australia to launch YGOrganization. Yugipedia came about because the company Wikia had rebranded as Fandom and changed a lot of their direction, and the staff of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia were incredibly unhappy with those decisions. So they approached me about hosting a new one for them to all do their work on.
Mm-hmm. So how come they approached you specifically on that?
There's not universal, but majorative staff overlap. Of the admins on Yugipedia, there's about 10 of them. 6 of them are also staff members on YGOrganization. So they're already well acquainted with things like my leadership and direction style as far as running a website and a team goes. And they wanted to have that same sort of approach to a new site that they were going to work on.
So why don't you tell me more then about each website? So let's start with Yugipedia. Let's start with that. What is that one all about?
So Yugipedia is, as the name implies, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikipedia. It is ultimately just a place to archive as much information about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Brand as possible, anime, video games, obviously the cards, and so on. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's what's called a fork, where you just clone an existing wiki and then branch off on your own path. So the existing Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia is still there, but all of the active editors and admins and staff members from it have all left to continue their work in a new direction with new aesthetics and new policies and goals.
So what are those the differences then between all those policies and goals, for example?
So the first one is just literally going to be aesthetic based, which is a lot of the skins and stuff that are very popular that Fandom had cycled out, we brought back, as well as placements and abundance of advertisements. Fandom had gone so far as to steal YouTube videos from other Yu-Gi-Oh! Content creators like Cyberknight. Cyberknight did a box opening for the Legendary Dragon decks, and the Fandom company stole his video, muted it, and had one of their employees do their own voiceover, where all they do is read the opening paragraph of the Legendary Dragon decks article over the video. And the reason they do it is so that they can put ads that they could monetize in those videos that they'd made, that they forcefully put on the pages, and the editors could not remove the videos from the page.
Oh, was there any kind of legality issues regarding doing that?
Oh, I'm sure there's tons, but we pointed it out to Caleb. I showed him hey, your video's been stolen here. What do you want to do about it? But it's ultimately on him how he wants to protect his intellectual property on that front. But ultimately, Fandom does own the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia, and what they want to do with it is entirely up to them. But there was something called a portable info box, which is basically just the container that has all of the information about the card in it. They wanted to change it and how it's done so that they could put ads inside the card details. We're talking a little banner ad that separates the level of the card from the attack and defense of the card when you're reading the stats.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And the staff pushed back on that. And they pushed back saying, well, if we do this, then it will make the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia work better on mobile. And the admins on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki were like, no, we don't want this. And one member of the 20 people they had on staff said, I like that idea. And fandom took the initiative to say, since one person said it's okay, that's good enough. And they changed, forced the change through. So the very first thing we did was get rid of that when we forked. We do have some ads on Yugipedia, but they're very minimal and out of the way, like way off on the left and stuff, so that they don't interact with the content at all. That's always been a huge goal of mine. If you go to like Yu-Gi Organization, there's ads all over the damn place. Got to keep the lights on, obviously. But if you're actually looking at the article itself, from the title of the article to the last word of the article, there's no advertisements within the content itself whatsoever.
Yeah, because I just get when I go to the organization, at least when I start off, I always get that little like bar at the bottom that kind of pops up and some ads on the side, but nothing that really interferes with it. And like, thank God, because that's what, if you're going to put ads, at least keep it out of the way. And I'm sure that's kind of annoying for a lot of people that, you know, are trying to read like any website for that matter.
Yeah, we try to make sure that we don't have ads that cause like horizontal scroll bars or pop-ups or redirects. Audio playing is the biggest concern. If there is an ad playing audio, I will have it destroyed from space. Like, I am on that like crazy. That's basically what my job is. Every minute I'm awake is monitoring the ads, making sure that they aren't malicious in any way.
Yeah, and that always happens to me every time I do fantasy football research. There's always like something playing in the background or like an auto-scrolling ad, which bothers the ever-living heck out of me. So I'm glad that like there's like some sense of like ad placement to kind of get that out of the way, because I'm sure like that's a big annoyance for like a lot of people who like are trying to read a lot of these articles or like the videos that we have out.
Yeah, it's there's ever-changing challenges involved with it. There's way too many advertisers and way too many ad types to keep track of it on your own. Nobody could ever do that. So what you end up doing is something called header bidding, where all the different advertising companies, Amazon, Google, and so on, all bid for that space on how much they're willing to pay per 1,000 impressions. So you come to the site and refresh 1,000 times. That would be cool. That'd be 1,000 impressions. There is a floor that you put on it, like a minimum starting bid of, let's say, 40 cents. And that way the people creating these malicious ads were like, hey, you won a $100,000 thing, click here. They're not going to be willing to bid like $1 per 1,000 impressions. You take more money from them than they're going to get from their scams. So these auctions help prevent that sort of thing from happening. But every once in a while, like, there was a really big change on iOS where they're in the name of privacy, as they put it, there was like no more cookie storage, which meant you no longer had any value as a demographic. When you came to, if you come from like Facebook to Yu-Gi Organization or any other website on an iPhone, there's no way for it to know that you did that anymore. So you had no way of being categorized into the different like 18 to 49, like, you know, demographics and stuff, which meant there was no auction for your group. So for like 2 weeks there, people bidding even like a 1,000th of a cent for that space were winning those auctions because they were the only ones bidding on it, and it created a ton of malicious advertisements.
This is almost like targeted adding in a sense, like targeted ads in a sense.
So they do try to populate based on, and it's actually usually done for like research purposes. I'm sure if you've come to your organization, you've probably seen an ad for like Tide laundry soap. And I can tell you, nobody 18 to 25 is going to buy their laundry soap off of a Yu-Gi-Oh website. That's just not going to happen. But the point of the ad being there is to prove that. They aren't putting the ad there to actually sell the soap. They're putting it there to prove that that demographic isn't interested in online purchasing of it, so they don't try and sell it on Amazon and stuff.
So then what do you do then as a site director for Yugipedia, first of all?
So ultimately it comes down to just being the final arbiter on all calls as far as like a major change is going to be concerned. If we want to have like, gosh, what's a recent example? If you go to like the Blue Eyes White Dragon card page, which copy of the card is going to be there. Do you want to go with the maximum gold print because it's the newest printing of the card? Or do you want to go with whatever the most recent text is on it, the most recent artwork that we've found, stuff like that? And just as far as like priorities and orders and goals, we have something called Fabricator, spelled with a PH, that is essentially a massive online whiteboard of here's everything that needs to get done. And I like delegate each person, like this is the best person for that task, this is the best person for that task, I can handle this task, I can do that task, and so on. And we just try and get all of those things done.
So how do you like monitor the edits that happen, especially since like it's a PDF first of all, and that anybody could edit? Like, how do you monitor all that to make sure that all the information coming out is supposed to be like correct and accurate?
So any change made at all will go at the very top of the list on the recent changes page of Yugipedia. You could, in theory, just leave that page open and refresh it all day, and you'd see every change made on the site, period. We have, as I mentioned, a huge staff of administrators who are constantly monitoring that. They even have bots that send them a little, almost like a little email saying, hey, somebody with only an IP address for a username just made an edit. You may want to go check it. The edits are also scored in size. So how many bytes the page has gained or decreased. And if there's a change of like minus 800 kilobytes or something, somebody went through and erased a bunch of paragraphs. And undoing that is as simple as clicking a single button, revert change, and everything goes away. If you want to actually edit a page, you have to sign it and give a reason why and cite the source of your change. And if you don't, then it gets flagged and doesn't go live unless an admin goes in and approves it. And then there's also certain pages that we protect. So if it's, for example, a new set, Blazing Vortex is coming soon, all of the card pages for that and all the texts on it are protected. The only one who can edit those are administrators who are logged in.
And I'm assuming that you would be one of those administrators.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, how much work do you like actually like put into the Yukipedia site, considering first of all, Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that's like changing ever so constantly?
So most of my work and attention goes to YGOrganization rather than Pedia, because the Pedia staff are so fluent and entrenched in what they're doing. And I wasn't myself an admin of the Yu-Gi-Oh Wikia. So a lot of like what they'd been doing for 12, 13 years before I came along, they're just continuing to do on the new platform, and I'm trusting them to continue to do that. So ultimately, I just, like, I'm in a Discord server for Yugipedia, and occasionally I'll get a tag in the staff chat, hey, Dan, blank broke, can you go take a look? Or, hey, Dan, we're trying to decide if we should make the default landing page for, let's say, Blue Eyes White Dragon again. Do you want it to go to like the anime page where it talks about the history of Blue Eyes and stuff, or do you want it to land on the card page when you just type Blue Eyes White Dragon into the search bar? What do you want the default ones to be? On Wikia, the anime was the biggest priority. On Yugipedia, the card game has a bigger priority.
So, like, is there like a number of hours like a week that you would like kind of spend to just working on just Yugipedia?
Not a whole lot. It's usually just as it comes up as far as Pedia is concerned. So probably like 10 to 15 a week.
Okay. So you just kind of like a pop in, delegate, and just to kind of answer any calls that may come up that requires like your kind of like admission because of your status.
Yeah.
So then let's move over to YGOrganization then, because you said that's the one that you focus more on. So give me an overview of YGOrganization.
I don't even know where you want to begin. There's so much. It's been the last 7 years of my life, and from 2016 until present, it's been my, well, not sole source of income because of Yugipedia now, but basically my full-time day job, so to speak. I do dedicate no less than 12 hours a day to it, and have every single day since 2014.
Oof. Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. Even like when I take trips to like Florida or Los Angeles and stuff, I've always got a laptop and a phone with me, and I am on it constantly, just always working on things, always talking to people. A lot of it is just sitting in the YGOrganization Discord server. It's not very intensive work, but it is constantly interacting with the community and making sure that things are up to date and that the site's working and that the ads aren't redirecting people and that each different like demographic and region is accounted for, that the pages are loading correctly in Kuwait. That was an interesting day to use like a specific example. The site just wasn't loading in Kuwait for some reason. It's just a constant amount of work of just making sure that like the site's working, that the articles are going out correctly, that there's nothing wrong with the site, that the plugins are up to date, coming up with new ideas and stuff. I run like a little classroom on the Discord server where I teach Yu-Gi-Oh to players who want to learn how to get better, whether it's just starting out or raising their level to like the YCS point where they can play in top events. And we have like a new deck list submission tool coming out that I've been working on for the last couple of weeks, where you can actually enter your deck and it'll go into a little database. And then we've got a bot finished that will scrape all of it and publish them all and keep track of like how many decks are running Effect Veiler and how often and stuff like that.
Well, it's kind of similar to, because I believe YGOrganization also did, or Yugipedia or something like that. One of the two. I think you did your own little app where you can like do your own deck building on your phone, and then you can kind of like do like test draw hands and kind of like
so
manually kind of play it out.
That's actually a common misconception, but that's got nothing to do with me or us at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yugipedia, the Android app, I think it is, maybe it's an iPhone app, the deck building app is made by someone who I have almost no affiliation with whatsoever. He just happened to use the name. We have discussed over email multiple times back and forth that like, yeah, I don't mind if you keep using the name for your app, and he doesn't care that I use the name for my website, and we just continue our lives as normal. But I have absolutely nothing to do with that app.
Okay, because you would think so because they share the same name. So I'm glad you got that cleared up, because I always thought that was affiliated with you somehow, even though I knew that you never ever mentioned it ever. But I'm glad you told me that, because I thought it was involved with you. So now we know. And like I barely use that app too. I think I downloaded it once, but then I think I toggled with it once and then just stopped using it ever since then, and then I never used it.
A lot of my friends use it. I'll be on like Discord and they'll just post a message, hey, check out this deck list I built on the Yugipedia deck builder app, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that exists. I personally use either Dueling Book or the Yu-Gi-Oh card database to build a deck list when I want to share it.
Yeah, and then now they have Neuron too, which is also another easy way to get that done too. And I've done a couple deck lists on there myself, and I love that app.
I've used it, but I haven't built a deck on it yet. I like just taking pictures of cards and seeing what I can get away with. I'll like Google a card like Judge Man and pixelate it and see if it can figure it out and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. And I've done that once before, because I took like 2 infinite impermanences and I scanned them both, but one infinite impermanence was like glared in the light, so the phone couldn't recognize it, and I think it said it was just a weird random trap. I think it was like Crackdown, it called it, and called the impermanence like actually impermanence, or it said Cyber Dragon Infinity, something like that. It was just kind of funny to, just to screw up with the phone to see if how well the app was going to be accurate.
Yeah, I like that I can Google like a deck list, or like see a deck list in a YouTube video or something, and the app can figure out what card it is from like the picture on the computer.
Yeah, it's a really handy tool nowadays, and I was really anticipating like Neuron's release for it. So I hope that the deck list submission will also kind of provide like a really good tool for everybody who wants to use it. And I see it's already up on the website. So has it seen any success so far, or is it like too new to tell?
Do you mean my deck list submission tool?
Yes, the one that's on the YGOrganization.
So only like 5 people have used it so far. I haven't actually made a post saying that it's live. I'm just kind of seeing how many people can find it on their own without being told it's there.
Oh, really?
It's just like a soft experiment. But in the coming weeks, I will make a big post saying like what it is and how to use it, and we'll go from there.
And how long ago did you put it up?
10, 11 days ago.
Oh, it's okay. So it's still relatively very
yes.
new. It's not like a couple months old. It's actually fresh new, off kind of like off the press kind of thing. Oh, okay, got it. And where did this idea come up?
I just, I guess you could call it like shower thoughts. I just threw out I'm always working and just thinking like, what can I do to make the site better? Today we were talking about how the site is 7 years old. A lot of us that were in our early 20s, mid 20s when we started are hitting our 30s. Half the staff doesn't even play Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, and they still update YGOrganization every day. and it might just be time to like bring in like a new brass. We've got a few people in mind who are pretty active in a Discord server to bring them in as like new writers and new posters, and just kind of breathe in a new generation and retire the OG crowd.
Yeah, because that's where we're starting to see now. Because I've talked to like so many like players of like the old guard, and now they told me that like we're a little bit too older now. Like we've got like other commitments that we have to do. Like we have like a wife, I have kids, and whatnot. So it kind of gets difficult, right? And like myself, I'm 33 years old. I'm kind of getting up there. I've got like a career now. I've got my girlfriend. I've got my other hobbies. So like I still love Yu-Gi-Oh. I still play it on a consistent basis, but it's that definitely couldn't spend as much time as I could now as I could before, and that's why like we're kind of starting to see this new guard come in now, which is kind of important, but it also brings like a fresh perspective on things too.
It's like one of our guys, D-Summon, he's got a wife and 2 kids now, and he's also running his own sister site called Beyond the Duel. So
So what else? Oh, sorry,
I can't imagine like trying to do everything I'm doing right now with 2 kids. Like just the amount of time that would take.
Yeah, and I don't have any kids yet, so I can only imagine if and when I finally have kids, like how much more of my time is going to be free for this game. I kind of hope I still have some time. I know friends that like have full families but still can make time to play the game, so I'm hoping I can at least stretch some kind of compromise in between so I can still play this game. So tell me, what else can I find on YGOrganization?
Besides rulings, deck lists, new card information, and forbidden lists and stuff, we do try to have like just strategy articles, things that you can like use as resources to learn the game. One of our guys, Quincy, likes to post like how to play like Drytron, the new Drytron deck coming out, or archetypes in sets that don't get as much attention, like the Marincess deck, or the Charmers, like that new deck that like hardly anyone even looked at. So we do, it did start off as an attempt to just fill the void left by metagame.com, because the void was being filled by a split between ARG and oh my gosh, what Shriek, like this just terrible website out of Germany. And I just didn't like where things were. So I mean, I had the idea how to fix it. I knew how, just I didn't have the means to do so. And then through my years in Dueling Network, I made an awful lot of connections and put together a team that had the means to do so, and finally did when I was living in Australia.
And now it's started to flourish, and now it's that and Yugipedia have become like 2 sites that like I consistently use a lot. And you're also one of the sites that also tries to involve some like the OCG metagame as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more about what you do with like the OCG regarding that.
So the OCG is obviously a few months ahead of us, and therefore it does have some but not universal value for our game. You do have to know how to split the difference between the two. For example, the OCG has max C legal, but we do try to catalog as many deck lists as we can find that we can vet and prove are real. And then when we know that they are, like when we trust the information, we publish them, we categorize them, and give people the information like, hey, 3 months from now, this is the type of thing you can expect the metagame to look like. You can see like Virtual World being used in Japan before it gets used here and stuff. There's also the products, anime figurines and stuff, or even just like casual life in Japan for Yu-Gi-Oh, which is way bigger. It's absolutely crazy how big Yu-Gi-Oh is in Japan. They have like full-on Yu-Gi-Oh cafes there, like a Starbucks, but the staff dress up as Yu-Gi-Oh characters, and
all the
meals are like Blue Eyes White Bagel and stuff. Like, it's...
Yeah, have you ever been?
No, I've actually never been to Japan. It's on the list, but travel is very difficult. And the few times I get to, I usually prioritize going to a YCS or Nationals or something.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that Japan is like pretty much on maybe like 90% of people's lists, if not more, because it's definitely on my list for sure. It's definitely a wonderful place, and I can't wait to go there if and when I ever get the chance to do so. Who knows when that's going to be? But of course, I would love to go to Japan myself.
Yeah, we do actively catalog like the keychains, even the dinner menus from said restaurants and stuff. Like everything we can find, we do post on the website. I think the only like Yu-Gi-Oh related object I can think of that we didn't put on Yu-Gi Organization was those speed duel demo decks that I revealed like last week, and I still put those on Yukipedia because that does archive literally everything.
Yeah, that's true. And so what merit would there be for somebody who's in the TCG to kind of look over at the OCG stuff that you guys would post on Yu-Gi-Oh! Organization?
Depends on their goals, I suppose, but obviously there's a lot you can do in regards to saving money. You want to build like the Armed Dragon deck after Blazing Vortex. It sure would have helped to get your like Armed Dragon level 10s 3 weeks ago for half the price they are now. You technically could use it to make a lot of money, but I prefer to look at it as a way of saving yourself money before the secondary market bubbles out of control and you can't get the cards that you need. Like the Zodiac monsters, for example, when they revealed Divine Arsenal, AA Zeus, Sky Thunder, or whatever. Yeah, just stuff like that. Like knowing the cards early will help you save your wallet tremendously.
So, in other words, can it also be used as like a good research tool? Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. You can learn like what to expect from certain matchups. The Virtual World deck using True King of All Calamities, you can be aware of that before actually having to face that deck even once in person.
I mean, that was a great example of that because I know that's like, I forget what the event was that happened offhand. I think it was like a luxury gaming tournament, that championship that happened, and Virtual Worlds won it, and that blew me out of the water because I'm like, I don't know what this deck does. Like, I can't believe I didn't even know this deck was even competitive or anything. Because, admittedly, like I'm very poor in doing OCG research, so I'm a step behind on everybody who does. So when I saw that deck, I thought, okay, I didn't realize this deck was good. It was actually fantastic, and then finally learned what it did. And like, as you said, like a great example of researching the OCG is just getting ahead on the decks. And then we saw that there were a lot of people were representing that tournament with Virtual Worlds, which is kind of like almost like the odds-on favorite to win the event just because of that. And that kind of stuff can kind of catch people off guard, like myself, if I don't ever like look into it. So I can definitely understand why you're putting up the OCG stuff, because it's a lot more vital than people think. It's kind of like, it's almost like kind of looking to like a crystal ball and kind of seeing the future in a sense, because Japan's ahead of us by a couple months. And oh boy, I'm very glad I have my Virtual World deck right now, so I don't have to like pay. I don't have to pay out of my wallet now to get it. I finally got everything, and I barely had to touch my wallet, if that. So I'm finally like swiping away.
I was able to pick up my Himes, the Virtual World Ultra Rare, for $4 each, and now they're like 25.
Yeah. The Lulus, yeah, 25 Canadian for people who are.
It was also 4 Canadian though.
25 Canadian. Yeah,
I think I spent about $15 US for a playset of every single card with Virtual World in its name.
Oh, nice. Oof, jeez. But you finally got the deck now. Right? All good.
I think so. I might be missing like some stupid spell or trap, like everyone's playing 3 tactics and I only have 2 or something like that. I don't know. I have over 200,000 cards. It's impossible to keep track of what I do and don't have anymore.
Okay, that's fair. I was gonna say, like, how heavily invested are you into the game right now?
It's definitely a problem. I had a bookcase that I sold to a guy over in Hamilton, Ontario for $25,000, and that was about 15,000 cards I sent him.
Oh wow!
And I still, like I said, I have hundreds of thousands of cards left. It's honestly incredible, and I've recently started sorting them, but it's a long way coming. I found my Gaia charger from Astral Pack just last night, so I did already have one of those, which goes in the Virtual World deck, I suppose. Yeah. But I can't, for the life of me, find a Heretic Seal of Heavenly Spheres if I want to play the Dragon Link deck. And I know I own that card. I probably own 3 or 4, but I can't find it anywhere.
Oof. It's kind of like a blessing and a curse to own so many cards, because that's your curse right there, is that you think you have it, but where is it? So how about you on like the competitive scene, if at all? Because and we'll say this before the whole pandemic situation
So
happened.
it was certainly a lot more before the pandemic situation. Wow. The pandemic hit everywhere but here. I don't want to say we didn't get it, but relative to most people, it basically may as well not even have happened. In my entire province, we have less than 100 cases. Even today, during this second wave, we were at 0 cases for the entirety of July, August, September, and October. So our stores were open, locals were running, everything was fine for months. But people were still very hesitant to show up. Like the locals still only had like 5 or 6 people in them.
Can you remind everybody where you're from, first of all? So
I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada, just over on the East Coast. I'm an entire hour ahead of New York as far as like time of day is concerned. I'm super far east. But yeah, going into the pandemic, I had picked up 3 of every card from Secret Slayers. So I had like Adamancipator Researchers and Elblick the Golden Lords, and I was getting ready to buckle down for the upcoming WCQs and stuff, and obviously all of that didn't happen, and all the YCS events got canceled, and it took a lot of the wind out of my sails. So I haven't taken it seriously, but before the pandemic, I was firing on all cylinders. I usually play on Dueling Book under secret accounts, hidden names and stuff, so that people don't know who I am, especially like my students and stuff like that. I just don't want to put up or deal with it. I've been active on either Dueling Book or Dueling Network since 2012, pretty much every day. Obviously locals. Regionals are a little tougher. I head judge all the regionals in Nova Scotia, so I don't really get to play in them that often. So I have to get my invites from OTS championships at my store. And then nationals has this tendency to be in Nashville, Tennessee or Fort Worth, Texas. And it's like a $3,000 plane ticket if I want to go. And that ignores accommodations and food and my deck and everything else. So don't really get to go to too many of those. I did get to go to Pittsburgh. That was a really good time. I had probably the least fortunate event of my entire life in Pittsburgh, if I'm completely honest with you. I had the Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon, the prize card in my deck. I was playing that Thunder Dragon Danger Dragon Link deck thing at full power, everything ready to go. And my round 1 opponent I sit across from is playing the same deck as me, and he's got 3 copies of the prize card in his deck.
Oh my!
2,500 people in the room, and like 6 of us have this card, and this guy's got 3 of them sitting across from me.
Did that turn out to be like the difference maker of the match?
It was horrendous. Well, that match in general is a coin flip that I lost as well. But just like he was someone who was way above and beyond prepared, rather than having like a buy until like round 5, like most people using that deck were going to get. And then my round 2 opponent was playing some Mystic Mine Turbo. I didn't main and out for it in game 1 because I figured I could always just beat those decks in game 2 and 3. And I just didn't see anything in game 2 or 3. So I started 0-2, which was not what you want to see. And then I lost in time to an Orcust player later in the day. So I had a really unfortunate event.
Yeah, it's really deflating to start 0-2 and then go on for the rest of the day. Even though that you can still somehow like squeak in, but you've got to be like perfect, like all the way through to even get a shot.
You can't hiccup anymore the rest of the event if you start 0-2.
Yeah. It's a fun little fact for you, like for everyone out here. I've only 0-2 once ever in my illustrious like 17-year career playing this game, and I'm talking about like a regional or higher. I did it at the WCQ. I think it was in Pittsburgh itself, but that was when it was it was Monarchs, BA, and Cosmo. It was that format, and I lost like the first 2, but then I stormed back, and I think I won like my next 3 or 4, but then finally got like eliminated after my 3rd loss. I'm like, okay, that's my day. But still, that was probably one of the most horrendous events I've ever played. That's like nationals, because I never go 0-2, and I always tell myself, just don't go 0-2, don't go 0-2 drop. Like I get so many people that say, oh yeah, I went 0-2 drop. I'm like, And I always had that pride. I'm like, I never have gone 0-2. I'm so happy. And then when that day hit, I'm like, well, there goes that.
I've had my share of unfortunate events. I mean, I've been playing the game for 2 decades. I've got every kind of event you can imagine. But like, I've had events where I've just been hard cheated twice, and I didn't top. Like, I was X2, but I didn't top, and my 2 losses were both to just flagrant cheats. I had one guy. He asked me what my card did. I can't remember which one it was. I activated some spell, and he's like, can I read that? So he picked up my card and looked at it, and then he put it back down in a different zone and flipped up his infinite impermanence across from the card after he put it back down.
Oh, wow.
And like, I had another guy who he let me go to end of battle phase and activate evenly matched, and then he chained Eradicator Epidemic Virus to it and called Trap, and I was like, okay, well, evenly still resolves, whatever. And he called a judge, and he was like, no, I'm trying to activate my Eradicator at the start of battle phase. And just like that was in the same event. Like, just not great times for anyone involved. That was YCS Niagara, the most recent one of those. Those 2 happened to me there.
Okay, yep.
Just like, I played in a YCS Toronto in like 2015 with a Yang Zing deck, and I started off 5-0 and 10-0 in duels. Like, I had a perfect event going, beat Necroz, Shadow, Necroz, Burning Abyss. But the deck has absolutely no answer whatsoever to Ritual Beasts. Don't have one. And who cares? There's only going to be like 8 or 9 people playing Ritual Beast. It's not even a good deck. And of course, my round 6 and 7 opponent are back-to-back Ritual Beast players that just slaughter me. And I don't. I don't top. And probably the worst event for me I've ever had was YCS London 2018 or maybe 2019. One of the 2 of them. The one with the Danger Dark World FTK that like Jeff Jones was using he used it at Niagara, and then the London was like the subsequent month. I went to London with the knowledge that Summon Sorceress was not legal there, and therefore Jeff Jones's FTK doesn't work, so I did not build to play against it. And then I found out that 17 people, all of which you know the name of, from Raphael and Evan to Jesse Cotton and so on, had all come together and found a way to do the FTK without Summon Sorceress, and they were all playing it. And I had absolutely nothing in my main side or extra to deal with it. And I found that out at about round 4, and I dropped with a 4-0 record. Because it was Comic-Con. YCS London is MCM Comic-Con. It's literally like being at San Diego Comic-Con, but in London. It's the 2nd biggest one in the world. So why am I going to sit here so that I can get into Top Cut and get FTK'd when I can go enjoy friggin' Comic-Con? So I just dropped with a 4-0 record, which is the worst thing I've ever done. I'll have to know I did that for the rest of my life. But it was, of the 17 of them that had the deck, 16 of 17 of them ended up in the top 32, and the 17th one was Jesse Cotton, who finished 33rd.
No. Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I remember that event. Oh my god. Even if I was 4-0, like I knew it was anything could be looming. I still go because 4-0s are like could be few far in between for me. Even though I've gone 4-0 like many times at many like high premier events, it's just I just can't do it. I just can't do it because that's what I traveled for the event for. But I mean, was there something that you did at that Comic-Con that made that worth it?
I don't regret the day. I had a really wonderful time with my best friend. I got to hang out with a whole bunch of like European Yu-Gi-Oh players, and I mean, I was at Comic-Con for free. It was awesome. So I have no regrets as a human being for dropping. As a player, I regret not gaining the experience of playing 6 more rounds in Europe against high-level competition. I probably cost myself a lot of personal growth and gain as a player there, but I traded it for non-Yu-Gi-Oh benefits. So
it's like, what did you do?
Well, the Nintendo booth was really awesome. We got to play like a couple upcoming Nintendo games early for the Switch. Honestly, I don't remember which ones. I think Smash Bros was one of them. I got to play a bunch of that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's understandable because that's very popular. I'll play it, but it's not like
it's not like I didn't still get to like go back to the YCS and enter some side events. We got to play like those giant duels with the cards that are like the size of me. I won one of those. I got a Shining Victory
those
pack
games.
and pulled a Ghost Reaper, which was kind of cool. So it's like a first ed European Ghost Reaper, which was honestly my answer to the stupid FTK in the first place. I was just gonna Ghost Reaper Fireball Dragon and be done with it, but I didn't play them that day, so weird. Anyway, and again, I got to spend, like, I have friends who live in England, and I only ever get to see them when I go over there. So it's really nice to get to spend time with them. Like Aaron Ray from Complexity Card Gaming, I got to spend like hours with him, and I never get to see that guy, so that was fun. But yeah, it was just like that event was just like sour in general. There was a bunch of people who had to line up at like 6 a.m. to get into the building. They give out free Comic-Con passes to anyone who plays at least 2 rounds. So a whole bunch of people who don't even play Yu-Gi-Oh enter the tournament. They've got like hundreds of like kids who were playing just the most recent starter deck, so they had a legal deck list to enter with, and just it's really weird. The first 2 rounds may as well be buys, and then after round 2, when everyone gets their bracelets, like half the room drops. Like the event is really dumb. Yeah. And the mindset of the live stream is the first round feature match is always last year's winner. That's how they go about it. So they featured Jesse Cotton playing that stupid FTK deck against this like 13-year-old kid with a starter deck. That was the round 1 feature match.
I know, and I was wondering when I saw that match happen. I'm like I didn't tune into the match right away. I kept seeing it online, and then when I heard it, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, did they actually do some research into this before they put this aside? Because I know that typically, like, they would pull the deck lists aside for whoever the matchup is going to be, and you think you would look at it and be like, no, this kid's going to get slaughtered if he goes up against Jesse, because he's running practically a starter deck on this. I think he was running UFO Turtle. I think
can't remember
deck,
specifically.
That's one of those cards. Not to say it's a bad card. It was a great card back in the day, not so much now. But I was like, oh my god! I'm like, this is going to be like one of the biggest steamrolls ever. And I'm like, I wonder if this kid knows exactly what he's going to get into with this match, considering who he's going up against. And I'm willing to gamble that he doesn't. But after that match, I'm like, oh my gosh, why did they put that match up to begin with? Like, maybe he could have saved it for like another round or 2 or something.
Yeah. I would have just not featured Jesse until round 3. If you even stream the first 2 rounds at all, or like specifically look for 2 known players playing in round 1 or something.
Yeah, exactly that. Because I actually had no idea that it was a bunch of people could just get a free pass if they played the tournament. So I didn't even know that. So that would explain. Yeah,
it's an $80 a day convention that you can get a free weekend pass to for a $20 YCS entry.
So yeah, pick your poison. In other words, yeah, maybe not pick your poison, but like the choice is pretty obvious. I would easily play 2 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh, like drop out and go to
the event caps. They can only have so many people, and unless you like pre-registered, then. Oh, I think like less than 100 people got to register day of for the event because of how many people pre-register and get those passes. And these people are lined up since like 6 a.m, and they're not allowed in the building. They have to line up outside so that they couldn't even play in the YCS. Like, that was just really bad.
Well, I'm glad you solved that mystery for me, because I don't know how the heck that match came about. Because I understood that they would take the champ and put it on. I mean, that would make sense. But when you look at the opponents, like you really don't want to kind of feature that. Like, they don't really do that for sports. Even they don't put like the primetime champion and then put it up against some like scrub team or anything like that. They want to put up against like a good opponent, at least if they're going to showcase them off the bat. They might like flex the game to something else. But just seeing that, I'm like, oh my, like this poor kid has no idea. But I'm gonna guess again that kid maybe didn't care that much, because he just did his 2 rounds and then just
It's why Jesse came in 33rd. His first 2 round opponents were both just dropouts. He played like random kids. They like it's worse than a bye. They just drop after 2 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, because they would just suck your tiebreakers out at that point in time if they keep losing, or even if they just lose the first 2 rounds and then drop. That
he had to be televised as the guy who FTK'd a child and then got 33rd in a top 32 cutoff. So I'm sure he had a much worse weekend than I did.
Man. I mean, just it's kind of like just waving you in the face and kind of taunting you about that happened. But I mean, I'm sure there are many of us who have had like those kind of bad beats before. I mean, I've had 2 ninth place finishes before at regionals, and one of them, I got knocked out in 8th place. Happened to be my teammate Ralph, who you know, and I was like, I was so happy for him, and then the head judge at the time, who like knows me very well, and he also likes to like poke fun at me at a personal level, as does many people do. I said, and in 9th place, David Bowie. I'm like, and the whole room just like erupted and just laughed at me, and I'm face palming at myself.
I've
I'm like,
never,
oh my god,
I've never been on the like sliver slot, like 9th, 33rd, 17th. That's never happened to me. I've always either been like first or sometimes second, because there's not enough rounds. Like we're both 10-0, but his tiebreakers are just better. Or like, if there's like 16 people, sometimes I'll squeak in somewhere like 12th or 13th. Or I don't even make like top 50. Those are the only 3 results I ever get.
Yeah, but never as like the bare,
I've
the last
never
person
been like, if we just look at like top 16 as like a generic example, I've never come between 16th and 21st in my life. It's always complete clean, safely in, or not even close. Like I'll finish like X4 that day.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't even. Jeez, I've had it several times where that happened, and I haven't topped a YCS until I think it was like 9 years competitively playing. So 2015 was my first YCS top, but before then, I think in 2012 I played in Philly, and I went X2. Like the whole event, I went X2. But the top cut was 32, and I was 34th. So when I won my last match, I'm like, oh my god, I'm finally going to top my first YCS, probably. And looked at it, I'm like, no, crap. So I've had it happen before. It's a pain and a half to see your name be called like the 9th or 33rd or whatever that, as you said, the sliver spot goes. And it's heartbreaking. It is painful. So I can only imagine how like Jesse felt, but maybe not, because he's been there before like a million times.
Except for the event in Niagara where I got the hard cheats, the guy cheating with the Eradicator and with the Infinite Impermanence. I haven't actually lost a match at a regional or YCS event since 2015 outside of end of match procedures.
Mm-hmm.
I've always lost like game 3 at a time to, I'm just going to summon Sky Striker Kaina. And it's like, okay, cool. I lost round 3 of some event to Aaron Furman. He was playing Thunder Dragons. They called time in the round, and he's got a UDS belt, so we were over in the VIP area, and we didn't start for like 5 minutes after everybody else. So when they called time in the round, they were basically just telling us, you guys have 5 minutes left in your round when they did that. And he just managed to slow everything down a little bit, and then side deck for game 3 with like 2 minutes left on the clock, and he's going first, and he's like, I'm just gonna Gustav Max you, man. Like, we may as well not even play game 3. And I was like, well, yeah, this is a great feeling, because I absolutely can win this matchup. You're playing Thunder Dragons, but it is what it is. Like that's, and it's been like that since like the time rule changes in a big way. Like UDS in Vegas, I lost in time 3 different times to like Trick Stars and stuff. Like it keeps happening. So I need to figure out a way to close my matches out quicker, is my blind spot as a player right now.
What is your opinion of like the current time rule that we
with the
have?
knowledge that Pokemon's end of match procedure is pencils down? They don't even get to finish like the attack they just declared. I know it could certainly be worse. I do heavily prefer the old way, but I also understand that where judges are now paid hourly, events do need to get over on time. They can't have these like day 1 ending at 1 a.m. crap anymore. So, I mean, if it was just a complete vacuum and the only thing was like end of match procedures, I would prefer the old way. But I would definitely prefer the judges are getting paid than the old end of match procedures. Like the way things are currently now as a whole, I prefer, because more good is being done than bad.
Mhm. And that was my personal opinion on the matter. On it was why they decided to shorten the time because like the change of judges being paid from like product to money. So like Konami thought of it as a way to like, okay, well, this is how we're going to save money. Is just take away like the time of the length of a tournament by killing time. Now I'm like obviously I don't have like any actual evidence to that, but it's a thought. But it's a thought that has a ton of merit backed behind it. And of course, like most like any other people, like I dislike the rule. I think they can make like a small change to it. I don't think like maybe a lot for maybe to the end of turn, or maybe allow your opponent to have one more turn, maybe or something like that, or like each have a turn. But again, that probably fall back on like the same problem again because like I've seen a lot of matches that could even take like another half an hour, even on like the end of end of game procedure. I don't know how.
That's the thing is,
but I've seen it done before.
Everyone talks about like Yu-Gi-Oh only lasts like 2 turns. I missed it. It's a GOAT format where we both used to get like 12 turns each, and it's like people used to take 45 minutes to finish a match in GOAT format, and they still take 45 minutes to finish a match now. The only thing missing is the number of draw phases, not the number of cards played, and not the number of actions each player gets to make. It's just that your singular turn contains half of the duel now. I've seen people, it takes like 7 to 11 minutes just to play out the Dragon Link combo, no matter how good you are at the game and how fast you play your cards. So with 40 minutes, if we do play all 3 games, we get 13 minutes apiece. And if your turn takes 7 minutes, that's your entire half of the duel is the one turn. So I can definitely understand like finish the one turn, because like especially like cards like that grass looks greener, it can make your turn take like 15 minutes to resolve. If you end your turn and give the other guy 15 minutes too to do the same thing back to you, like that's not speeding things up really. So
yeah. And then that's now become like a new skill in itself in the game is time management. I find that is a much more critical skill nowadays than it used to be back then, when the turn limit used to be like 2 turns each at that point in time, or like the 5 turns thing. And there'll be many times where if I see the clock at about maybe like 5 minutes or something like that, and I won game 1, and I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to lose this game, I'll let my opponent kind of play it out until about maybe like the 3-minute mark, scoop, and then take my time, and then like tell them, okay, you're gonna go first or whatnot, and then maybe get a quick turn in afterwards, so I get the first battle phase, and it won't take me that long to get it. It's like that kind of thing. Like is starting to be like a real skill that a lot of players like maybe not have recognized that they've had to do
at the World Championships. They have these little green and red cards. When you use a search effect, they flip the card over and turn it red, and it means that they're not allowed to draw until shuffling the deck, and they get to play out their whole turn without shuffling, and then shuffle their deck and flip the card over when they're done. So if they're not sitting there shuffling and searching and taking a lot of time, if that events should move to like everyone doing that, like they should just give those cards out with pre-registration or something, so that people can actually keep track of whether or not they're shuffling their deck and stuff. So it would just speed everybody up. But as I mentioned, like this is a blind spot for me. I go into time a lot. What I need to personally work on, and so do a lot of other people obviously, is explaining your cards to other people. Like when they say, what does that do? And you tell them, and they still pick it up and read it anyway, and like just eat the clock. So you got to figure out ways to get through your duels quicker, especially if you're going to play a new deck like Virtual World where nobody knows what the cards do.
Yep. That's what I kind of do when I play against somebody. Like when I play like a first card for, let's take Virtual Worlds for example, and I like play the first card, and they're like, "What does that do?" And then after I do it, I'm like, "Do you want me to explain like how this whole entire deck works as we go along?" And they'll say like, yes or no, and then that's way I'll do it, and then I'll start explaining the cards as we go along. So that way, like we'll save some time, because I'd rather like play a very good game and not have to be like screwed over by time or anything. I hate going into end of match procedure. I have a much more satisfying victory, like actually like beating someone like down like legit to 8,000 life points, or there's
like a friend of mine, Johnny Lee. He likes to play all of his cards in French, and it just baffles me. And like we've had discussions about why, and he has the time it takes him to like find the translation and provide it to the opponent and stuff just eats so much of the clock. And he feels that it's still worth giving up the clock because people ask you questions about the card, like, does that target? And he likes the information that that's giving him. And I would never do that. Like, that's not worth the timer.
I that I can understand, but I get his side too, because he kind of wants to see if people understand the deck or not, and if they don't, that means you might be able to get away with a little bit more. Like, maybe you don't have to make like the perfect move, or you can maybe just make like a small misplay accidentally, and then you can still recover well. You know, something along that line, because that's a good way of finding out, does the person know the card or not? Do they know the deck or not? And then it's much different having to play an opponent who doesn't know the deck than to someone who does. Because like you have moves that you would expect somebody to do, like in someone who like knows the deck, as opposed to somebody who doesn't know how to play against the deck, and you know they could do absolutely anything, and you won't be ready for it. Like, it might play to your advantage, but you know sometimes it might not.
So I mean, everything's a resource, and you just have to know how to weaponize each one. And he's weaponizing information at the expense of clock. So,
geez, like I never even thought of that either. So that is pretty tricky. I mean, one little thing that I do like to do, like that's kind of similar to that situation, is that I like to synchronize the rarities of all my cards. Like, I like to have I don't care if I have two, if they're all commons or they're all ultras, whatever. So long as they're all synchronized, because I learned this trick like a long time ago, and then I actually got burned for it once too, because I think I had like 3 copies of a card. I don't know. They were different rarities, and I showed them one rarity, and then I played a card, but I played the different rarity, and they put it was smart enough to catch it. It's like, oh, okay, so you've got the other one in your hand. I'm like, how do you know? It's like, because it's a different rarity.
Yeah, a friend of mine used Atlantean Dragoons to search for a Deep Sea Diva, and then normal summoned a first edition one. So I knew he still had that unlimited one he searched for. That does happen. Just like one of our regionals in Moncton, New Brunswick, a guy named Todd Tolbart beat a guy named Brad McLean, because Brad likes to play his deck in max rarity, and his Ghost Rare Honest reflected the light onto his face. So Todd didn't sling into the Honest.
Yes. And I remember a story like that happened at YCS Toronto. It was a feature match between Audrey Tan and Jason Tan. Those two are not related, by the way, but they're from the same group of friends. And Audrey noticed a shine from the Ghost Rare Honest, and opted, okay, I'm not going to attack because you probably got an Honest in there. Or she attacked with the right monster to try to bait out the Honest instead. And that's why, and that's kind of the reason why so many people were opting to want to play the Secret Rare Honests, which I think ironically were more difficult to get than the Ghost Rare Honests at that point, because they're more sought out because they didn't show that reflection.
I try to have my rarities not match. I'm the exact opposite of you. It's the year 2020, and people have deck lists at their fingertips. If I sit down across from you and I normal summon Altergeist Marionetter, you know damn well that there's 3 copies of Multifaker in my deck. I don't have to make sure that they all match to conceal that information from you. I just have to not play like an idiot. If I add the ultra rare one to my hand, I have to make sure the ultra rare one's the one I summon. That's all it comes down to. But I've tried to find interesting ways to leverage that mentality. And the YCS that you and I met at, YCS Toronto 2012, was the first time I actually got to do that with my father. That was the event just after Mirror Force went to 2. And I gave him a super rare copy of Mirror Force and an ultra rare copy of Mirror Force for his deck. And he side decks the super rare one. So that after game 1, if you Mirror Force your opponent, you side out the ultra and in the super. So that when they see the super rare Mirror Force, it tells them you have a second one handy, and they start playing around it the entire game, and it's never going to be there.
See, I had never thought of that before. That's actually very tricky. It kind of reminds me of the whole Patrick Hoban play where he sided out a Djinn in his Necros, but then sided in another Djinn to kind of offset that, to kind of play not toy with the
I did have
kind
of a lot of us had the idea of, why don't we just side a Djinn, and you side out the Djinn by putting it face down on the table and siding in a card. I don't actually know that Patrick Hoban ever actually did it, though. I'm pretty sure he just kind of fell on the sword for that one because everyone was being so like angry. But I think he actually didn't do it. I think it was one of the Leverett kids who was the one who actually did that.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I know that he had like the same deck list as them, but yeah, I would like to think that he did it. I'm not 100% sure myself, but that's just what like the Peanut Gallery says. But that was a thing that happened.
I've also
allegedly
at
anyway.
an event in 2016, I think I was playing Burn. One of my upcoming TCG player articles is going to talk about that. But I had 2 deck boxes in my backpack. One of them contained the Burn deck in the absolute lowest rarity. Whole deck cost $20. And the other deck had the exact same Burn deck in highest rarity, ulti-dualities, like everything. Like that was like $1,000. When you write your deck list down, you never say what set or rarity the cards are. So as long as I took either deck box out of my bag and sat down and presented that deck to my opponent, I was not doing anything illegal.
Yeah.
And if I sat down across from someone who was like, I don't know, let's say he's using a spell ground to be as politically correct about my description of this type of opponent as possible, I would use the all common one. That way he would go on tilt and get really angry that he was losing to a deck of all commons. Like his $1,000 deck was getting beaten by a $20 bill. And it would frustrate him, and he would get mad at himself. And that type of player makes more misplays when they blame themselves than they do when they're mad at you. On the contrary, when I go against someone who's a bit newer, we'll talk like maybe like Ultra Pro sleeves and a sneak peek playmat type of player, I will use the highest rarity one, because those are the players who get mad at the uphill battle. They're the ones, oh, you're just some meta playing scrub, come at me with a real deck type thing. They tilt when they're mad at you instead of being mad at themselves. So I wanted to have like, yeah, I have $1,000 and I chose to play Burn anyway instead of Necroz or something. I could have afforded Necroz and I chose to burn you anyway. It's the message that I try to convey by doing that.
That's a really like clever psychological play at hand, because that's one thing, first of all, that I love about like playing in person is that you have the psychology like can come into play, like, and I can make so many better reads actually like playing against a person than I would being able to play like online, like on Dueling Book or something like that. So but these are like really cool things that I never even like thought of to do. So I'm kind of glad you're kind of bringing this out there, because these are really clever moves that you're kind of bringing out.
You start to understand the archetypes of players and certain tricks that like work on them. Like again, that same type of player from the most recent example, just call out his face downs. Every time he sets a back row, just be like, oh, that's bottomless chapel. Because if you're right, he'll freak out and go on tilt. And if you're wrong, he'll just underestimate you and assume that, like, when you go to like MST his card, that, oh, he thought this was bottomless, so he's just stupid. And just like you can turn matches you have absolutely no business winning into wins because you can mess with your opponent. You can play them you can play against the person instead of their deck.
Yeah, and that definitely happens too. Like I've had an example where I've had an opponent search like Ryko with Charge of the Light Brigade, and then I tracked that Ryko in their hand. Like I looked at him in their hand, and they didn't set that monster. They set something else. I'm like, okay, that's okay. It's not the Ryko. It's not it's something. So I thought I was like maybe it was like Necro. I thought it was like maybe Necro Gardener or something like that. It wasn't Ryko. And so I swung into it full well thinking it's not a Ryko. Sure enough, it was, and it popped my monster. I'm like, oh my god! And like I tracked his hand too, and then sure enough, the next card he set was another Ryko. I'm like, okay, there's that Ryko that screwed up that was supposed to like quote unquote like mess up my first play, but now it screws up my actual play, and I'm like, oh, and like I fell into it, and it just absolutely crushed me. And I know it's little things like that. It's those little psychology
back
games
in that
can,
format.
Like,
I was playing that Quick Draw Dandy Warrior deck that Jeff won Edison with, and I played the Charge the Light Brigade with the 3 Rykos. And turn 1 of the finals of a Moncton Regional, I played Charge of the Light Brigade and milled 3 Rykos. It's all for that effect. Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! Inversely, my best friend has milled 3 wolf with Charger Light Brigade to lose, but he did it, but he lost the game because of it. Because all 3 of those wolves prevented him, clogged his monster feed, so he couldn't summon Judgment Dragon to clear the board and win. So yeah, he's had that happen. And then inversely, he's had triple wolf summon on him, and he lost. I think he went against Dale Bolito when that triple mill happened. I'm going to have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it was against Dale when he did that. Again, I'm going to ask both those guys now after I'm done talking.
Similar, on the opposite thing. I've done a lot of explaining about, like, this is the worst thing that's happened to me. This is this bad thing at this event and stuff. My Millennium Puzzle Trophy tournament from 2004, like going way back. I'm 13 years old here. I'm going against Jonathan Breyer. The winner of the tournament gets, like, every province and state got these, like, Millennium Puzzle trophies, right? And the winner is going to get the trophy. And he's got that dinosaur, the old dinosaur structure deck. It's called, like, not Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, that's the current one. Super Conductor Tyranno, something like that.
Yeah, the one that
it like burns 1,000 if it kills something in battle. Like 30 attack guy. He's big.
Oh no! Oh, that one.
It's some crazy old. It was like a starter, the 9th ever starter deck. Yeah. So he's got that card on the field, and I'm playing E-Heroes, and he's got me basically wiped out. We're talking no hand, and the only thing I have on the field is a Thunder Giant, which discards a card to destroy a monster of 2,400 or less, and that thing is certainly not 2,400. And so no matter what I draw, I can't just discard it and pop this thing. And I have like 1,900 life points, maybe 2,000 life points left. And with a big bubble of people around us, I say out loud, I need a miracle. And I draw Miracle Fusion. Banish the Spark Man and King of the Swamp out of my graveyard that I used to summon the Thunder Giant for Shining Flare Wingman. And it's at 31. So I have to crash the Thunder Giant into the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, and it puts me at like 1 to 200 life points after the effect and the burn damage. But the 300 attack boost of putting him in the graveyard made Shining Flare Wingman strong enough to attack over the Conductor Tyranno, and then the effect burned for 3,200 more, and I won the game.
Oh wow, that's a huge move. So just to continue along this line, I'll just go like one little quick story and then be done with it. I had someone pinned up against the board, and this was like a Monarch format, but Dark Worlds were also out. So he was at like 1,800 something like that. I had a Treeborn Frog, so I looked at my hand. I'm like, I only have like one monster that can take him out, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I tribute it for the Stalos. And of course, the Stalos is when it's tribute summon, you randomly discard a card in your opponent's hand and then burn them 100 for the level that is. For each level that it is. Yeah. And of course, the one card he has in the top deck is Gold, Wu Lord of Dark World. And it completely wrecks me. It took out my Thestalos, it took out my set Ring of Destruction. Sorry, not Ring of Destruction, my set Mirror Force. And that's it. It's like that's it. And then he won the next turn later. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe he topped at the Gold that he can't play, and I play at the Stalos and he burns me off. And that was like one of the anti-top decks that I just hate. Oh, that just killed me. But there's also like one other little trick that I kind of do like implement today, but like my trick is like unfounded. It's just maybe placebo at best. But I used to never like pimp my cards ever. Like I don't care for like rarity. So long as it's a synchronized, that's what I care for. But nowadays, I try to at least pimp out my side deck, because I have that thought, again, unfounded, is that if they're hollow, they're more likely to be drawn, because some might have like a slight bend, a slight warp. That's just the natural like bend that a card would have. So kind of make it easier to draw. So I would always try to max rarity my side deck, so that way, like when I side them in, it's like, okay, you want to see these cards, because that's what the whole entire point of a side deck is. You want to see these cards like game 2 and 3. So that's what I did. Like I don't know if it's true. It's just something that I've like thought of. And I don't know if anyone else kind of follows.
So it actually comes back to the earlier point I was making that I forgot to finish about why I play all different rarities. I told you why I don't stop myself, but I didn't tell you why I actually do it. It was a theory that I'm sure you've been to an East Coast city before in your life. Shiny cards have this tendency to dress up as Pringles. And the shinier the card, the worse that gets. And around the time where Heavy Storm and Black Luster Soldier were gold rares, whichever gold rare that series that was, 2013, 2012, something like that, my dad was playing 3 copies of Tuning in his deck. And the only gold rares in his deck were BLS and Heavy Storm. And every time he would play Tuning, he would shuffle his deck, he would give me his deck to shuffle, and I would cut his deck and give it back to him, and then he would mill the 1 card for Tuning. And he milled either the Heavy Storm or the BLS 25 times in a row.
Which is the card you
we just
don't
deduced
be,
that
like,
it's
milling
because
with
gold rares have foiling on the borders. So there's just ever so slightly a little bit of curve from the humidity, and it's causing them to bubble up. So when I cut the deck, that's the point of least resistance. And it's cutting to one of his 2 gold rares. And with that in mind, every card has a different amount of foil on it somewhere. Even 2 ultra rares. If you got an ultra rare Soul and Judgment, it's got way more foil on it than an ultra rare Mirror Force does, because there's more of the card that's foil. And the letters are in different shapes and different positions and blah, blah, blah. So how much humidity your deck is going to reluctantly absorb throughout the lifespan of it, living in your house and in their locals and stuff, it's going to have a microscopic amount of bendage to it, 0.02 degrees or something. But the Soul and Judgment's not going to have as much of a curve as the Mirror Force is going to have, even though it's ever so slight. So the idea being that my Starfoil personal spoofing and my Super Rare personal spoofing are going to have different amounts of curvature to them means they won't pocket together. And it means that they're not going to clog and get stuck together. I don't want to draw 2 of the same card ever. It doesn't matter what it is. I want my 5-card hand to have 5 different cards. And if all my cards have unmatching rarities, then they also have unmatching curves to them, and they don't create little pockets that they get stuck in each other because they have identical curving.
You know, that reminds me of the Hobby League parallel rares that the Upper Deck used to print way back in the day, because I don't know how many times I've had people ask, are hobby cards legal? Are parallel rail cards legal? Yeah, they're legal, but of course the catch is, you know, are they like bent enough to like warrant like marking in any sense or not? Because if they do that, then it could be considered marking. But at the same time, if they somehow don't, then they're perfectly legal. And I've had so many disputes about that, especially at the YCS the Shonen Jump Championship, the 75th one in Edison. I had this one guy who kept sharking me every single time, tried to call a judge to try to get me in trouble because I played with parallel rare cards back in the day, and just did every single dirty trick in the book to try to get me to lose, like by some technicality. Thankfully, it didn't work, and I just plowed him 2-0, thank God. But still, it's like those parallel rare cards. Like I
used parallel rare Kaiku the Ghost Destroyers in 2013 in my spellbook deck, but the Starlight rares today have similar problems, and the maximum gold rares in the new maximum gold set are really bad for it. Like those things are bending really bad.
So do you think that people would actually like use that kind of specific rarity to? No, I don't want to say like for cheat because they're trying to cheat or anything, but at least have that probability of like.
I think that if you're going to try and cheat, there's easier and less subtle ways to go about it, and that the people who are accidentally benefiting from it are unintentionally benefiting from it, just as a generality. I know that like Max Reynolds got in a lot of trouble for his Starlight Rare Lightning Storms at the start of the year. Yeah, that was like the Lightning Storm was the first main deck Starlight Rare that people actually bothered to use. There was always like the Wind Charmer and Appaloosa up until that point, IP Masquerina and stuff.
Yeah, but like but Appaloosa and like the bends and like the extra deck cards aren't quite as prevalent. Like you wouldn't really penalize it so much for
he had 3 marked cards in his deck, and they were just Lightning Storms. And I don't believe for a second that Max Reynolds is a cheater. I don't think that at all. So it is what it is. Like he got taken aside by a judge, and like the Starlight rares are just dangerous to use. You got to be really careful with that sort of thing. There was back in Australia a kid, he had one of those double deck boxes, the 5Ds ones with the magnet lid, and he had a common Monster Reborn in the right deck box because he was playing the Hobby League one in his deck in the left half. And when they deck checked him, they're like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Well, I wasn't sure if my Hobby League Monster Reborn was legal or not, so I brought this common one to swap out if the judges told me I'm not allowed to do it." And unfortunately, his deck box contained 2 Monster Reborns, so he ended up getting penalized.
Yeah, because the judges will ping you on that if you have cards in your deck that aren't supposed to be that aren't registered in your deck list in there, even though there's just like a gag card, a gimmick card, or anything like that, or like some sort of like spirit card for yourself. Like you can't have that at all. Like, I had to deck check a friend at a regional, and he had I forget what card he had in there, but obviously it had no business actually being in the main deck, but it was just there for fun. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like this deck is in your deck box. I have to assume that it is part of your deck, and it's not registered deck.
And
so
like calculator cases and stuff. It's not a very friendly game. The rules are designed to hurt you, not to keep you safe.
And I've had like so many people that just had no idea, but I'm like, I'm sorry, like I feel bad that I have to like give you this penalty, but this is what the rules are. I'm just an enforcer of the rules. This is what I have to do, and sure enough, I've got to give these penalties, and like I get no joy in doing this, but I have to do it, and that's kind of it's a bit of a tough side on being a judge. I mean, some judges like it. I don't know who exactly, but I'm sure there's somebody that does. But
that event that I milled the 3 Rykos with the Treasure Light Brigade was the day I decided to be a YCS judge. That tournament, at the end of it, I was just so mad at like playing, and saw that like the judge got like a whole box of the set, and I was like, man, like the judge is doing better than even the guy who came in first. And if you don't come in first at these events, you go home with like so little. And I was like, screw this, man. I'm just gonna like take judging more seriously, go back to it. And the original reason I became a judge on the Upper Deck days was to just get better at the game, to like learn the mechanics and the rules. But that was like ultimately what led me to apply for like YCS Toronto back in 2012, where you and I met. And then that turned into, well, Halifax is going to start getting regionals now that there's a strong enough judge out there. But they wanted to like train me a little more, so they put me on judge staff for Providence the following October and put me on the deck check team so I could get more fluent with that. And then that's also at YCS Toronto 2012. I was roommates with Asher Roberts, and at he was the head administrator of Dueling Network at the time. He was the guy who was in charge of all of the staff. So he and I spent a lot of time talking about Dueling Network, and that's what got me into the site. And his quote unquote hero was Redshift from Pojo, a friend of Ryan. And I told him, Ryan and I are really good buds. If you want to meet him, we'll just go to his hotel room. It's not a big deal. And then at YCS Providence, October 19th, 2012, Ryan was my roommate, Redshift, and we invited like Asher over again. And that was the day I became an administrator for Dueling Network, and like slowly rose in the ranks and met everybody who would later become staff in YGOrganization and stuff. So I'm really glad that Treasure Light Brigade milled 3 Rykos.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Because first of all, I've met Redshift before. Great guy, and I've seen him. Like he had judged, I think, a Rochester regional that I topped at. I'll give you a quick little anecdote about that in a second. And during the time when I was a Pojo mod, like I would handle a lot of the Q&A, and so would he. And I'm like, thank God this guy is here, because this guy is helping out so hard, and like he's providing a relief. And so at the Rochester regional, I'd never met him before, and I didn't realize that he was the one who was head judging the event. So I had this ruling that my opponent and I weren't sure of, and I called them up, and like I had to call, and I didn't argue, but like I kind of disputed with him a little bit because I thought it was this, and I'm like okay, all right, I thought I was right. Turns out I was wrong, of course, and then I realized who he was. I'm like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have argued that.
I know the best ruling mind in the game right now,
because one of the best. Like I've seen a lot of people there too, like up there too. I think I feel like you have a couple of them on your organization as well. Because I think Ness 00, I think, is on there as well. Fantastic guy from Argentina. Fantastic guy for rulings. I don't really question him a lot. There was one guy from Brazil that he used his name. It was Corpse. That's what he used his name on Pojo. Yeah, fantastic.
Corpse
he was also one of the very few people that I would ever go against.
He's still down there, but he doesn't play anymore.
Yeah.
He's the only person to ever be more right than Kevin
that's what I
Turner.
imagine. So,
I will remember that for the rest of my life. I loved that. There was a back in the day, in the Pojo days, everyone kept trying to just like find an instance where the dude would be wrong, and he never was. And then someone actually made a post with like, here's an email I got from Kevin saying you're wrong. Like, suck it. It's finally like Corpse has been wrong. And then like 3 posts later in the thread, Kevin has to make a post being like, actually, I fucked up in my email. My bad. Corpse is the one who's right.
He's too good. Yeah, I haven't heard from him in a long time, so I don't know what happened to him. But I know, I assumed he wasn't playing the game anymore just because his name wasn't there. But like I knew, like Ness 00 was there, and like he and Redshift was there too. Like I know that those guys I can definitely trust. So like there's some like good names out there you can trust. And that was kind of my role as well. I wasn't as good as them, but I would call myself at least fairly reliable because the Q&A was one of the like the sub forums that I would monitor heavily when I was modding on Pojo. So like, and rulings was like one of my things because I started judging in 2000 and I want to say 2007 is when I started judging, and then I've judged ever since then. But I've been like an on and off consistently because I'm still like a competitive player at heart. But usually when I judge, it's either they just really are in dire need of judge staff, or I'm like, I don't like this format and I'm just gonna duck out and let you guys handle it. Or if I just don't have a deck to play, then I'll judge. But I've had my opportunities to head judge and whatnot, and like I have fun doing it, and I'll still continue to be a judge from now until then. But I'm still a competitive player at heart, and like I'd rather be a champion than head judge.
I was the guy who answered every thread in adjudication conflagration, like the ninja, the fast answerer, the guy who's always right, from like 2011 through 2013 until, as I mentioned, I joined Dueling Network's head staff, and I trained a guy named Alex Gravely, anti-TCB. He's actually also a member of the organization. And he then became like the quote-unquote Hanzo, because now it's late enough that Ninja Grandmaster Hanzo is running around. And he was like the guy answering everything. And then I guess like my grand student, like Alex trained a guy named Jackson Casanova, who became like, he started to fill that role, and Paul Kite filled that role for a little while, and they're both in the organization. And now like the current one who answers everything, he does it on Reddit, is a guy, Gallantron. He's now like the big guy who like knows every rule and stuff. And I am crazy rusty compared to like how I used to be. I get very simple things wrong all the time now. You really have to stick to it if you want to be like Redshift and Ness and them. And Redshift's the guy who does all the ruling posts on the org, so every single ruling that comes out of Japan he translates into English by hand himself. He knows every ruling that's been made on a card in the last 7 years.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like I've been on a bit of a decline with rulings myself, just like even though like I judge my locals a lot, but I haven't like stayed in tune to like Q&A and rulings like I used to, just because ever since like problem solving card text came out, it kind of diluted the need to like have all these like additional rulings. Because I remember like way back when you'd be able to search up a card, and then they'd always have like this long list of rulings that you would have just as a reference. But you really don't have that so much anymore because when Konami printed out this problem-solving card text, that kind of supposed to dilute the need for that. But yet we still get a whole lot of questions wondering, like, does this, or what happens? And I kind of miss having that, that little handy-dandy, like maybe like app or any kind of website that would have that kind of ruling out there.
If
like,
you go to db.yugiorganization.com, we have an online ruling database for every card ruling, and it's viewable offline if you need it on your phone at a YCS or something.
I'm going to look into that, because that would be very, very helpful for myself, because I still get a lot of judge calls at my own local, and even on my own personal time. I had a lot of people from my local and even outside my local that message me and say, hey, what happens when this happens? Like I've even had phone calls that just when people were in the middle of a duel, it's like, hold on, I'm gonna call
me too. I've had Chris Perovic call me.
I've had phone calls, like, actually, and
he is. No, Chris is amazing.
He's a great guy, though, nonetheless. But Yeah, I just kind of find that funny when that happens. I haven't had like anybody of like that kind of star power kind of phone me for a ruling, but nonetheless, it has happened to me before, and it's kind of funny. It's sometimes I don't mind it, but there are sometimes it's like, I'm just like I'm preoccupied. Go bother somebody else, or please look it up, or something like that. I'm just really busy. But like when I'm like not occupied, I'm just chill, and I'm just kind of do something low key, or I'm like in the video
I'll
game where
message
I
like
can pause.
Redshift
Like,
on
yeah,
Discord
sure, I'll
if
answer
I'm
your
like
question,
head
no
judging an
problem.
event and I'm second
But
guessing myself.
yeah, geez, maybe I should have that source too if I need to, because I trust Redshift a lot, and I can't believe I was arguing with him not knowing who he was. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, yeah, okay, never mind. If I had known this guy, I was like, no, I made myself look like a fool, and I didn't find out until after I posted like a tournament report online. I think it was on Pojo. I put it on, and then Redshift says like, yeah, I was like, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to like argue with you or anything like that, but this is just what the ruling was. So I'm like, oh, that was you. I'm like, oh, geez, okay, yeah, I was so in the wrong.
Yeah,
That's
he
my
doesn't
bad, because I looked it up
face out there.
afterwards, and I'm
No
like,
one
yeah,
really
I
knows
was
what he
wrong. I
looks
was
like.
completely wrong, and he was right. Yeah, exactly. He really doesn't. It's just him with the it's always the Pokemon substitute doll that he always has like either like animated or like the actual doll. Like
Yeah,
it comes
it's
in various
inspired
forms,
by
but
one
that's
of his best
basically what his
friends, another
avatar
member of the
is.
org named Dylan Deadborder. Frog guy. He uses the substitute for everything, and except for when he's using his little frog icon.
Yeah, and then I know that like Ness as well. He also uses the same avatar over and over again. I don't know who it is.
Wish I could tell
like
you.
a
I used
girl,
to
like
know,
anime girl,
but
I
I
don't know who
don't want
that
to give the
is.
wrong answer.
But
And I don't remember. I'm sorry.
yeah, but I know it's like, but that's the same thing I've always seen on Pojo, and it's on again your Yu-Gi-Oh organization as well. So yeah, but it's just kind of funny how we've kind of gone through this evolution of like the rulings people that you would never argue against, or like would maybe like Haley's comment would happen before they would ever be wrong on a ruling. And I've like been a part of like majority of them because I've been so immersed for the rulings for so long, because that was like one of my strong suits back in the day.
I've had the same Pojo profile picture image, whatever you want to call it, since 2004 when I registered. I took the artwork of Archlord Zerato and I put it in paint and hit invert colors. So he's like all purple and blue and stuff. And I named myself on Pojo Archlord Azrael.
Oh, really?
And put that picture up. And then like 3 years later, Phantom Darkness came out with Dark Lord Zerato in it. And I was like, hey.
There we go. That's me. I think mine would always be like Don's Luke or like Gate Guardian, or one of the like a variants of those two, because that was like those were my two favorite cards of the game. So and I would always have like something like that. That would always be my avatar. And then like the last time I was on Pojo, like my last, I was like an animated version of like my wrestling self, my wrestling alter ego, my persona, because I did professional wrestling as well. I don't do it as often as I used to. Like my last show was on New Year's Day, but before that, it was just like an animated version of me in like my wrestling gear. That was the last.
There was no skill card for Gate Guardian in Speed Duels. There was no like Gate Guardian deck made for that.
That would probably get me attracted to Speed Duels, and I would probably have a deck aside for that, because I've been yearning to at least do something nice with Gate Guardian. I think the best thing I could have done was make like Zumbaba General and attach Gate Guardian to it, and that's as far as it goes for making that at least.
I wouldn't be surprised if Legacy Gate Guardian support came out in the coming years with like how they've been giving things like Thunder Dragon and stuff decks.
Yeah, and then I would look at my Gate Guardian collection over there. I'm like, oh boy, I finally get to use you guys like in a deck, because I have 44.
Are they all at MRD, or do you just have like an array of them?
It's an array of them, but I do have like a lot of first ed, like English ones, like foreign ones. I have several retro pack ones, and I have even have a couple fake ones that I count towards the count, because it's pretty funny to have a couple like fake Gate Guardians. It's called Gate Safeguard, by the way.
I actually submitted
sound,
last night, the day before. I don't know. Times a blur. It's the pandemic. I submitted an article to TCG Player. It's going to be. It might even actually already be up on how to spot counterfeit cards. So, like your Gate, you got the sound attribute, Gate Safeguard.
Yeah. And I am pretty sure the text says for call, like please present. It's supposed to say Thunder God, but replace the H with a J. So it says, please present gender. I'm like, oh my God. Like, this is so horrifically like counterfeit, but it's so hilarious that it's one of those things where it's so bad that it's good. And that's the reason why I keep it. It's like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories game to me. I think it's so bad, but because it's so bad, it's so good, and that's why I can't put it down, because I'm like, this game is terrible, but yet I want to keep playing because I don't want to let this game beat me. I want to crush this stupid little game in the palm of my hand, and I have to keep playing to kind of, maybe assert my dominance, I guess is the best way to put it.
I did just quickly go to internet.tcgplayer.com, and it actually is live. The how to identify fake cards has gone up in the last hour or two.
Oh, good. Well, then we will get that at the bottom of the description. Then we'll link that below for anybody who wants to read that. And man, this conversation we had there really took a turn into a lot of things that I never thought I'd ever have a conversation about. And I thought it was really cool about how we talked about a lot of like how, like, card rarities and like the different points of psychology that we can kind of implement in this game. Like, I had the conversation before about Yassine, about like psychology in this, but never not in this point that you and I discussed.
Well, I'm glad. Like I said, I teach a class on how to play Yu-Gi-Oh!
Man, that means we have to get a game in ourselves, because we've never actually played each other either. We haven't. I played Yassine like 3 times, but I've never played you before. So I really want to play with you, like in real life, and just see what kind of psychology that we can kind of extract out of each other, and see if we can.
The last time I played against a friend in this kind of context, we're like, hey, we're finally getting an event together, let's play. They described me as a terrorist, just to warn you.
Oh, okay. Good. I will remember that, because I try to be like very polite and like try to grant a lot of sportsmanship, but when I play against people, I usually let like the first mistake slide. People say like, "Can I take that back?"
My policy that's your one and you can take any move back as often as you want, as long as information isn't gained. If you summon the monster and ask for a response, and I say no, now it's too late. If you
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because that point, it's like card play. Some people will be like, I'll play the card, and then it'd be like, can I take that back? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll let you take that one back. Just like if they put like a field spell, for example.
As long as they haven't like asked for a response yet or anything, I'm usually okay. If they like Monster Reborn and they bring back something and they go, wait, no, actually I want to bring back that instead, I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Like if I didn't have like a trap set or something, I would rather play against you at your best anyway, just because you're like, or like not, you want to have like 2 more seconds to think about your play. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, it's kind of like baiting for that Monster Reborn example. You could be like baiting out a DD Crow, for example, just as like a way of like kind of gaining information. It's like, oh, they're not going to do that. Okay, maybe they don't have DD Crow. Okay, then like, so wait, so I changed my mind. I guess go with this card. Yeah, that I can agree on for that point. But again, like my example, for example, if they like play a card where like it doesn't do anything yet, and like it's okay to take back with nothing gained, then yeah, I would let them take it back. And I completely get what you're saying.
At the end of the day, it's a game. And like, even if you're at a YCS, you're playing for like what, like a $500 Yu-Gi-Oh card. Like, it's not worth. Like, it's a full weekend. Like, especially if like you include a Friday, like 72 hours for $500. Like, play a different game. go learn Magic or poker or something if you want to like lose sleep over. Oh my god, this like one guy like screwed me or whatever. Like, it's a card game. It's meant for children. Like, get over yourself.
Yeah. I really like, I'd rather play for like the glory and the credentials more than like the actual prizes itself. Like, the prizes is kind of cool. I like to like showcase it off, and then that's it. Like, and then I'll sell it off, whatever. It's like, I just want like the set in stone kind of thing. It's like, okay, you won this event and no one can take that away from you. It's like, that's
I played
what I kind of want. I like
when I was in Australia, summer 2013 with the Spellbook deck. I played in a regional and I went 9-0, 18-0 in games. And then the following weekend, they had something called Supernova, and it was essentially the equivalent of a YCS, because Australia didn't have those yet. And again, I went 12-0 and 24-0 in duels. Like, I did not lose a single duel the whole weekend. And
nice.
Like, the thing I take away from it, of all of those games, is just like how I won the last one. Like, it's not about like the prizing. I think honestly what I won was like a box of Raging Battle and got like an ultimate rare power tool dragon, which was worth like $3 at the time. But like the things I do it for are more like the memories of like how I overcame stuff. Like I very happily remember like an Altergeist versus Dinosaur matchup where he had like Dulka and Ultimate Conductor Tyranno and Lagia, and all I had was a Konkiri and a personal spoofing, and I still blocked his entire turn. Like just and a Silquidus rather. So like Konkiri got to block like 4 attacks. It was really cool. But the last opponent, the last duel, game 2, was against a guy named Liam Friedel. And he, along with everyone else from that locals in Perth, Australia, was perfectly aware that I was on like a 50 win streak of duels here. And I'm playing my spellbook deck, and he's playing Evil Swarms. He goes first game 2, normal summon Karakian, normal summon another dude, make Ophion, detach, search for the spell, set a couple cards, go. And in my draw phase, he flips over Imperial Iron Wall and says, I finally got you. It's over. Like, I've ended your streak. He's so proud of himself. He's super happy. Everything is great. And I'm looking at my hand, and I have Spellbook of Fate and High Priestess of Prophecy, and like I can't banish any cards. Like, what am I supposed to do here? And my 6th card is Monster Reborn. And Monster Reborn is Evil Swarm Karakian. It's a 1600 attack spellcaster. And I play Spellbook of Power and give it an extra 1,000 attack points and beat it.
Oh my god.
So, like, it's not the prize that I play for, it's the moments like that. And you can only get those type of things against good players. If you just sit there playing as 3-year-old kids and win 1,000 games in a row, good for you. It's just the experiences are what it's about.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because like I do think the Yu-Gi-Oh prizing isn't the most fantastic or the most glamorous, but I love the credentials of knowing the fact that, you know, I have this many tops. I've done this. I've done that. I've won these kind of championships before, and you know, it just feels good just to have it. And that's all. It's more than the prizes I always just like sell off or whatever. There's only like a couple prizes that I've kept because it has like actual sentimental value. Like my first YCS top, I still have the Minerva mat. I still kept that. Like I think my Rainbow Dragon mat, I think that's the first regional that I won. I kept that. It's just little things like that that I would keep as mementos and namesakes. Other than that, like I would just throw away a bunch of prizes. I've sold like majority of like my regional mats that I've had or whatnot. But yeah. Winning those kind of events, like I love the glory behind it, and I love like the satisfaction after they winning, because I'm a very competitive person, so I love winning. First of all, of course, like I have like my ethics on how I win. Like I'm not gonna try to shark like a win or like try to cheat my way to win or anything like that. I want to like win like fair, honest, and that way like no one can criticize me for my wins. It's like this is how I won.
Right.
This is and I mean the right way.
Again,
that's
the really only value comes from like your personal feelings on it. If you know you cheated, you'll never feel fulfilled.
Yeah, definitely that, because like, you know, deep down it's like, okay, well that wasn't like a real win. You're the one who knows that you kind of was a little underhanded to get that win. But
right,
you know,
it's a drive. Like you don't have a drive to be a champion. You have a drive to be the champion. And you'll know that you aren't unless you actually were better than everybody. That's the thing you care about. It's not necessarily the win. It's the status of being better.
Yeah, it is. Like, there's the only one exception to that is that I think the first OTS championship I won, I lost to one of my local friends. Like, he was the only one who dealt me a loss, and then he got knocked out in top 8 as I went on. Like, I never had to play him again. And he goes to me at the end of the term, is like, yo, man, like I beat this scrub so hard and he wins the championship. Why can't I be champion? Like, we were just joking around. Like, we were just laughing at each other. But it was just kind of funny when it happens, because typically he beats me more than I beat him. It's about like 60-40, maybe like 65-35 that he would beat me than I would beat him. But just like and then he beats me, of course, like when it matters. But I come out with a championship.
The last time I played in a Halifax regional, it's still going to be a long time ago because I have to judge them all. Dark Destroyer was brand new, and I'm playing this like what will become Pepe one more set from now deck using I think Draco Face Off, maybe not yet, but like Luster Pendulum and Plush Fire and stuff. And I get sat across from a friend of mine playing Infernoids, and he reasonings me for 26 game 1 and 2. I can definitely relate to like just losing for no reason to a friend at a big event.
And I can imagine that can be really frustrating. It just sucks, kind of like the milling and the milling. It's like, when is this going to stop? Infernoid, stop, please. And it's like, yep. Well, there goes that.
Yeah.
It's like the game's over even before you get a chance.
I have to have played like 10,000 duels. I got like way more. Like I've got my highest rating on Dueling Network was 1914. And like that was like 2,000 games that summer. Mm-hmm. And just I played at least 1,000 games with that spellbook deck. Like it's just for years and years and years I've played, and I've seen like everything you can imagine. And it just somehow new stuff still happens, like every format that you just wouldn't think. Like oh my god, what was it? There's a card right now, Ice Dragon's Prison. Summon a monster from your opponent's graveyard, then if you want you can banish it and a monster they control at the same type. And a lot of people are playing this in Ultrageist, and they shouldn't. It's a terrible card. It says that you can't summon Multi-Faker with this trap because you can't summon other monsters the turn you summon Faker, and you have to summon their monster. And I'm playing this Ultrageist mirror match against a guy, and it's like, okay, well, I know this deck, and he just doesn't, based on like the duels we've been having. I'm more than likely going to win this. And he flips up Ice Dragon's Prison on me, and I'm like, okay, well, like he's terrible, and he's just made his odds of winning even worse. But the card he takes with it is my Multi-Faker. And that works because Multi-Faker says you can't summon monsters other than Ultrageist monsters, and it just summons from deck when it's special summoned. And like he completely swings the game against me with this card that has no business being in his deck, and it's just like, man.
It's like me like playing against somebody who plays Gores and Gadgets. It's just because like they're always supposed to have field presence, but they have a Gores. It's like, oh, killing me. But I'll just put that really quickly out there before I like shut everything down. Oh, because we can go on like all night about these bad beat stories that we've had of games that we shouldn't be losing and games we should have won. But oh god, like we can go all night on this because we played this game for over 15 years, at least, the both of us.
I lost to Jason Gravermeyer's Gadgets at Nationals in Canada before Gadgets existed. He bought them from Japan and brought them over, and I just had to take his word for it, what they all did.
I've only played him once, and that was like he was taking a break at a Canadian Nationals. I think this was when it was was it? It was when Rescue Cat was the one that won, the Charles Easton one. And I think he was taking a break, and we were just playing. I think I was playing Salvo Dad, and he was playing Morphtronics, and we only had time to play 2 games. I beat him the first game, then he OTKs me the next game, and then we had to stop because he had to go back to work. So that's like the one time I ever get to play Jason because to me he's always been like incredible. He's an incredibly busy person. Like he's love him, love being around him. We've hung out a couple times too, like outside of the game. It's always fantastic being with him, but. God, I wish I could have like more like actual Yu-Gi-Oh time with him, but I at least get the privilege of being able to at least hang out with him on a social level. Because like every time I see him at like a YCS, I say, "Hey Jason, like I know you're busy. I just want to say hi real quickly and let you go back to work." Do that, and like I just walk off, and that's what I do. And like periodically, I'll say hi, and I'll always say goodbye. Dan, thank you so much, man, for being on the podcast, man. This is like really cool. The conversation that we had.
I would like to shout out Earl because we did a lot of talking about org members and like powerful judges, and he didn't come up, and I feel like that's an injustice. He works harder to be a good judge than anyone on the planet. Throughout everything, and the whole reason I'm here is obviously all of the numbers, everything they've done, whether it's like people Ash Slaughter from Duelist Grounds, and Redshift and Ness from Pojo, and Eva and Dylan and Cahoon and everybody. Obviously, Neo Arcadia, I am almost nothing without that guy. The people from Yugipedia, obviously all of them, Cheese Dude, Ultimate Karibo, everybody, Dino Guy. Even like the people from the Yu-Gi-Oh subreddit for using our translations and being there for me over the years and helping me understand how like the Reddit works and how to leverage it into site growth and just everything. Jason Gravermeyer for all his support over the years and bringing me on TCG Player Infinite so that I can try and help reach more people with the educational articles and stuff. And just It's honestly crazy. You for having me on the podcast and for helping me when I first started out my judging career. You and Chef Manahan were like the reason I was successful as a YCS judge. And, Joe Franchino for being my first ever YCS head judge. Like I don't. Where do you even go, right? Like it's been 2 decades,
Great
and
guy.
the last
Great
7
guy.
years of it especially have been just crazy. So
I know, like I've had so much fun playing this game for all these years, and it's going to be hard for me to stop just because my passion and love for this game is still burns hard. And even though I don't have that much time anymore to play this game as much as I'd like to, like it's still there. And
shout out to
whenever I can find
Jeremy
time,
Thibault,
I'll be opening up my
Sharpman, for
deck
being the
decks.
guy I milled the 3 Raikos against, because that's the domino that launched my Yugi organization career, apparently.
It's just funny how something sparks from something else that you would never even think of. Dan, thank you again so much for coming on. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more information, check out the Gate Expectations podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Patreon, Twitter, and Spotify.